So for the last part of this assignment, we're going to be generating some graphs based on some other data that relates to your history class right now. You guys have been learning about the 70s and the 80s, and this table right here shows you the differences and changes in the unemployment rate and inflation during the Carter administration and during Ronald Reagan's presidency. So what we're going to do is learn how to take this table right here to create these graphs that look like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this empty page that I have right here. Well, it doesn't have any graphs on it. We're going to talk about how to generate these graphs. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to see the trend lines of the changes in unemployment and inflation throughout the entirety of the end of 1976 when Carter took office all the way through the end of 1988 when Reagan finished his administration. So the way that we're going to do this, we already talked about how to create tables, is we're just going to select our titles up here and then drag down to cover all of this data that we want, right? So we selected all of our data. Now we're just going to click Insert, click on Chart, and it's going to automatically create our chart, all right? So this says unemployment rate and inflation, and you see that you have your different lines, right? This charts it over time because remember, these are our years over here, kind of like we had our countries in the other one, we have years over here. So it's charting it over time by year, and you actually see down here it says 1976 through 1988. So, and it has the title of inflation or unemployment. So now what we want to do is we want to format this to make sense to what we're trying to show. So inflation rates and unemployment change throughout time, right? So probably a more appropriate line graph would be the smooth line to indicate how these things are constantly changing and varying. So now that I have that, I've basically generated a chart, and it's that easy to give you a visual idea of what happened with unemployment and inflation. Now let's move this so we can see our table above. So what we can see from this is we have 76 through 88. When we look at this, we know that Reagan took office at the end of 88, beginning of 81. So you can see on here that somewhere right in here, this is right where the presidents change, and you can see where the differences in these things happen. So I want to do some finishing formatting to this. Let's make it look a little more like this table up here. So I've got my chart editor open. I've already changed the smooth lines. I'm going to go to Customize on here. And when I go to Chart Style, it gives me options for backgrounds, fonts, all that. So my background right now, if I want to make it match this one, it's a little bit off-white, right? So Edit Chart, Customize. I'm going to match that color. I'm going to make my border black like the other one. Oh, that's my background. I'm going to make my border black and my background that slightly off-white gray. And I believe for my numbers I use this font, so I'm just going to change it to that. And now I'm also going to resize it a little bit so it matches up with this line, looks nice and neat. So this is all well and good, but what if we wanted to see what these specific things did during the different presidents' administrations? So I'm going to want to select what happened to unemployment and inflation just during the Carter administration. So I'm going to select just the data from Carter's. I'm going to click Insert, do a chart. Now this generated a column chart. So what I want to do with this one is I actually want to delete this because I accidentally selected Carter. I don't want to select Carter. That's going to confuse it. You see that, how I accidentally selected Carter? I only want this data. So I'm going to insert, put in a chart. That showed up how I want it. Again, you don't have to do this, but aesthetically, I think it makes more sense for something over time to show the flow of it by clicking on the smooth lines. I'm going to drag it down. I'm just going to line it up so it lines up nice and neatly underneath here. Line it up right there. And one thing you'll notice when you're lining charts up is that if it's lined up, it'll show you that little blue line that generates to show you you're in line with the one above. Now, I'm just going to choose to go back here and change some of these things, right? So my chart border, my background color, keep them all the same. And there we go. So now I'm going to create one more, which is I've now got This is for Carter, so I'm going to go ahead and change the name on this. I'm going to add Carter. Now I want to make one for Reagan. So I'm going to select this data, insert a chart. This has now generated these numbers. Again, I'm going to drag this one down. I'm going to line it up underneath. There we go. And I'm going to change the title again because I want to indicate that this is Reagan's administration. These are his numbers. And go to Edit, Smooth Lines, Customize, Chart Style, change my background color, change my border color, change my... So now I have these graphs or charts and this table up here, and all these things match up. And here I'm visually showing now what the differences were between these. So you can see this shows all of it, but then this actually splits up between the Carter administration and the Reagan administration. So this shows all of the Reagan administration years. Now, if we wanted to, we could also split up by Reagan's first term and his second term. But if you see, now you can show a comparison to say, okay, well, during Jimmy Carter's administration, we saw a relatively even, maybe slight increase in unemployment, and we saw inflation go up pretty rapidly and then start to decline at the end. Whereas we see when it comes to inflation with Ronald Reagan, that's what our red one is here, we see a rapid decline, primarily a decline, except for this increase in that last couple of years, right? And then we see the unemployment rate, while it peaks at the beginning of his administration, it consistently goes down. And that's by comparison to Carter's, where in his administration it kind of slightly went up, but it already wasn't necessarily at that bad of a percentage, right? It was at 7.5%. Whereas we see that Reagan, his administration started there and then trended down. So this is just a way to show you guys, one, the technical tool of how you create graphs, but also how when we create them, we can use them to visually create data. And sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to see how data trends over time. So there's another sheet in here. This is a comparison, and you don't have to do this for your assignment, but I just wanted to show it to you. This one actually shows breaking down how we can compare the presidencies, right? So on the same chart now, we're looking at this blue line is unemployment under Carter in the first 4 years of his presidency. And this red line is unemployment during the first 4 years of Reagan's presidency. So there's probably a number of things you could glean from that. One of them being that while Reagan overall had a drop in unemployment, he actually ended his first 4 years pretty close to the same unemployment rate that Carter ended his first 4 years, right? And then we can also see that during Reagan's second term, so his second 4 years, you can see where his unemployment line ended up getting way below where Carter's ever was during his 4 years as president. So this is just to show you how you can interact with tables, but you can also put them in graph form and be able to learn more about data that way. And then more specifically to the beginning of this video is giving you an idea, further ideas of how to create and edit graphs and charts in Google Sheets. And for your assignment, you'll be required to create just these 3 graphs. You don't have to create these graphs. These are already in the master sheet that I'll be sharing with you.